Hello, hello. Happy Friday night. Um, I won't be on camera tonight just because I have been dealing with migraines for the past 2 days. And so I have everything very lowly lit in my house right now, candles, and just hoping to give myself a little break. I have my screen on the lower setting for brightness too. So I just figured it'd be better. Um, to not show my screen tonight because you probably won't get the best visual. Anyway, I'm sharing a couple articles, so it probably will be best to just focus on those two. Anyway, so the discussion will be in follow up to a prior video where this topic was brought up of the black male checklist, and it's about their privilege. So, black men have privileges. And I talked about the differences between men and women and the privilege based on gender, which I think most people will agree that there are certain privileges men have over women. And then you bring in this aspect of race and privileges that, again, I think a lot of people will agree. There will still be some that fight this, but that there is certain group, especially here in the United States, that has privilege because of their race. And there are other people that don't have the same privilege. So that is what this is based off of. The article I'm going to be referencing is actually something that a black man created, and he listed 96, I believe, specific things that black men have privileges um, for. So I think the aspect of where he's coming from is really comparing black men to women. But I think it's interesting because you hear a lot of men say, a lot of black men say that they don't have any privilege, that they're, it's down and out. The man won't let them do anything. But there's a lot of privilege that you have, black men, just being a man, just based on your gender. So we're going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to turn the music down. Let me know in the comments if you like music or if you don't. So I'll let it play for a bit while I pull up this article. The first one that I actually want to show and highlight is I just want to show the person that actually wrote this black male privileges checklist because it was a man. And I actually had to call myself out because I originally thought it was a woman, especially because they had the name Jewel. And so I just automatically had assumed that it would have been maybe a woman, maybe a um, black, you know, feminist or something, but no, it's a man. And so I'll just talk to his bio, and he actually has a couple of books that seem very interesting that I may end up talking about. But Jewel Woods is the co-chair of the Ohio Trafficking in Persons Study Commission Demand Reduction Subcommittee. He's an author and a gender analyst whose views on men and boys in American society have been featured on TV, national news, and radio talk programs. So he's been featured in places like The Root, Ebony Magazine, The Huffington Post, Dallas Morning News. So a lot of different outlets he has been he's been published in. So that's interesting. Now, the main thing here is I want to highlight that he is the author of the Black Male Privileges Checklist. He's also the author of Don't Blame It on Rio, the real deal behind why men travel to Brazil for, I won't say that out loud. So he has a PhD in social work and he focuses on men's issues, specifically men and boys issues, right? And so he has his different books here, which I will probably look into later. Bell Hook's Love for Black Men, and also 10 Things Men and Boys Can Do to Stop Human Trafficking, which is another topic I've talked about on this channel because slavery has not gone anywhere. it exists just by a different name. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be highlighting this checklist. So I'm going to take this away and pull up the checklist. Oh, while I'm doing that, I know YouTube does not send out notifications, and I am assuming people are back to their normal everyday life. So let me just hit the note that I'm live. I always forget to do that. Okay. So I'm pulling up this checklist, and again, it really is lengthy. So it came up in conversation before. Hopefully, we'll have time to really walk through this a bit. And I'm hoping that this will be more of a discussion. So, depending on who joins, I will definitely provide a link to join the conversation if you have thoughts on this. So, there is some pre information here as well. But the first point I want to highlight is that they break it up into these different segments. There were some segments that I really honed in on that I could relate to. There were some points that I couldn't fully relate to, I wasn't 100% on. But overall, I think it's a really good list of some different privileges that Black men do have. So, I am going to start with this first one. So, I don't have to choose my race over my sex in political matters. When I read African American history textbooks, I will learn mainly about Black men. When I learn about the civil rights movement and the Black Power movements, most of the leaders that I will learn about will be Black men. And I can rely on the fact that in the near 100-year history of national civil rights organizations, such as the NAACP and the Urban League, virtually all of the executive directors have been male. The fifth one, I will be taken more seriously as a political leader than black women. This one I'm on the fence about because I feel like there are a lot of black women that politically are trying to do a lot for the black community as a whole. However, this aspect of being taken more seriously, I do see just in work environments that women in general are a lot of times taken less seriously than men. So I can understand that. I am not in politics, so I think I would need more context around that, but I can believe that as well. Then this next one, despite the substantial role that Black women played in the civil rights movement and Black Power movement, currently there is no Black female or woman that is considered a race leader. I can live my life without ever having read Black feminist authors or knowing about Black women's history or Black women's issues. I think that is a real challenge across the board when it comes to women's history versus general male history. We learn about the men, we don't really learn much about the women. I can be a part of a Black liberation organization like the Black Panther Party, where an out R Eldrick Cleaver can assume leadership position. I will make more money than Black women at equal levels of education and occupation. And we talked about the fact that there is a pay inequity when it comes to men and women in general. Next, most of the national opinion framers in Black America, including talk show hosts and politicians, are men. That's interesting too. I guess when you look across CNN and other networks, there there is a lot of, there's a lot of men that are at the forefront of these conversations. So that's really the political realm. So let me know your thoughts about that leadership and politics section. And hello, Natural Larissa. Larissa, I can get your name right. Welcome in. So I'm going through this checklist where this professor, this black man, created this checklist noting the differences between genders and showing how many privileges black men actually do have. So I'm walking through this checklist. So let me know as I kind of go through here. Let me know if you agree, disagree, or have thoughts about them. So I'll continue here. So the next one on the list is the beauty section. And I mentioned earlier, I relate to this a lot. So the first one is number 11 on this list. I have the ability to I have the ability to define black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. In comparison, black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin tone, hair, or body size. So this is a black man realizing this and putting that into this checklist, which I 100% agree with that because when you go into black media outlets, you go to social media, just in black spaces. I was just hearing something else that happened with Mike Epps, where he he was making even some maybe colorist comments about his own daughter, which was interesting. Supposedly, this is coming from another source, from Paris Milan, and you do see that there's this standard for black women to basically not look black, not have naturally curly Afro textured hair that goes up to the sky. It needs to look like, straight hair, European people, what they have, not to have tan skin. All of these different standards, but we don't see that in the media as much for black men. Not to say it doesn't ever happen, but you don't see that. Number 12 is I do not have to worry about the daily hassles of having my hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way black women do. I do agree that it's not quite the same as black women. I talked about this in another video. I think the one case that is different is that I do feel like in the workplace, black men do have to keep their hair trimmed in certain environments, certain professions. I just saw an article where this lawyer actually had kudos because he kept his dreadlocks when there was pressure for black men not to have dreadlocks in the law field. So that I you guys know I try to look at both sides of the spectrum. I don't just fully say, "Yeah, that's right, that's right." But I like to take a step back, and I do think for the hair issue is heavier on black women because of the earlier point. So the first point about I have that ability to define black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. And then the comparison, black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin tone, hair, or body size. I think that's a big reason why, because even in our own group of people, black women are more critiqued because of our hair, our natural hair, skin tone, body size, body um, structure, form. And of course, if we go outside the society, it's going to be different, but we kind of get it on both ends of that. So I 100% do agree with that. But I do think black men, I think that black men have some hassle, just not to the extent that we do, for sure. The next point, number 13, is I do not have to worry about the daily hassles of being terrorized by the fear of gaining weight. In fact, in many instances, bigger is better. Mm. This one I was, and a man came up with this checklist, but this one I was like, I could see both ends of it. Definitely for women, I was trying to think of, okay, is there a negative for a black man to be bigger? I think there is. The I think the issue with that would be the visual that a lot of times we see for Black men where they're threatening just for existing. So, um, that could be a hassle, like, I would call being pulled over, for example, a hassle, you know? And then being bigger, so being a bigger Black man. So who knows? That's just my opinion, I'm not a man. So, but that's my thought on it. Also, Larisha, let me know, yay or nay on the music. Are you liking the background music? Is it a distraction? Let me know. Just something I would try to test out. Next on the list is my looks will not be the central standard by which my worth is valued by members of the opposite sex. And yes, this is a privilege that men have for sure, 100%. Men have this privilege, and specifically, Black men do have this privilege. So that's another thing that Black men, you have a privilege based on your gender for that. Your value is not solely about just the standard of the way you look, in which we just brought up the point that he made, where he's saying that a Black woman's beauty has been defined by Black men, and they're setting it against European standards. So, yeah, that's interesting. I actually overall do agree with those points about the beauty. Now, I am going to skip over the next part and go into popular culture just for purposes of this channel. I'm gonna do another video where I just include members where we may talk about that. So in the pop culture section, we have I come from a tradition of humor that is based largely on insulting and disrespecting women, especially mothers. Oh my gosh, this relates so well to this video I just saw from Paris Milan. So, and it was regarding Mike Epps, and she played multiple videos where this man, Mike Epps, he's talking about the mother of his child and saying that she looks like James Brown, and he's making so many jokes about that, and that's not okay. So this whole tradition of humor based on insulting and disrespecting women, I've talked about that a few times. And hello, KB, welcome in. Nice to see you. I've talked about that a few times, right? About that issue. And my issue has always been kind of the mockery and the dressing up of the men dressing up like women and more the caricature of the women, like Big Mama with Martin Lawrence, Big Mama's House, which I keep seeing on Amazon Prime. They keep pushing that movie. It's either Amazon Prime or Disney or something. One of the things I'm subscribed to. But then also there's Medea. That's probably the biggest one. Tyler Perry's Medea. Kind of this, stereotype Black woman. And a lot of comedy definitely is based off of that, for sure. So the next one here the next one here is I have the privilege of not having Black women dress up and play funny characters, often overweight, to my point, that are supposed to look like me for the entire nation to laugh. Exactly. And I always just always rubs you the wrong way, right? Because there is a privilege in that. So someone else is creating or adding to this imagery of you as a Black woman. So having the privilege to actually do that. The next one listed here. I can easily imagine. Oh, wait. The next one is actually when I go to the movies, I know that most of the leads in Black films are men. I also know that all the action heroes in Black films are men. Yes, so another point about gender, and so the privilege in your gender. The next one is I can easily imagine that most of the artists in hip hop are members of my gender. Yes. I can easily imagine that most of the women that appear in hip hop videos are there solely to please men. Yeah, I relate to that one as well. Most of the lyrics I listen to in hip hop perpetuate the ideas of males dominating women, sexually and socially. And we talked about the pimp culture, which is coming up on this next point. I have the privilege of consuming and popularizing the word pimp, which is based on the exploitation of women with virtually no opposition from other men. So this is where this checklist actually came from. I'm gonna pause and share the video and put it in the chat. But yes, I talked about the exploitation briefly of Black women. So I'm gonna highlight that here and put it in the chat. So that's the link um, for that. Okay, so that's not really helping my headache, so I had to turn the music off. Okay, so going back to pop culture. So most of the lyrics I listen to. So going I'm gonna pause there. I have the privilege of consuming and popularizing the word pimp, which is based on the exploitation of women with virtually no opposition from other men. And yeah, I don't see other men calling people out for the pimp culture. I don't and that wasn't really fully my era. Like I think that was more 80s period, which is my brother's era. But he would talk to me about Easy E and like he tried to get me to watch the movie. I think Ice Cube's son played in the movie and I Straight Outta Compton, yes. I was like, I can't even remember the movie. But I was just like, no, I'm not supporting I'm not supporting that. I learned enough about what he's no. I'm just like I don't agree. So yes, I would agree with that because yeah, men aren't really calling out other men as much. Hi DOD. The next one on the list is I can hear and use language B's and H's that demean women with virtually no opposition from men. And I would add, no opposition really from women. I think that's a really tough hit on our culture that is even a part of the culture, that music where men are regularly calling women to this day B's and H's, like just rolling off the tongue along with that, you know what they call other men. So yeah, without any nothing. Meanwhile, you can't even say the race of another person in your music or else you're done. You're you're off the list. um, I think it was Young what was it, Young Bird or someone that was talking about a specific group of Asian people in his music and they quickly stopped that. Yet they're able to talk about women in this way, in demeaning ways. Privilege. And yes, W. Brizzle. Privilege. Okay, I'm listening. What you got? This is a full checklist, W. Brizzle, that a black man created talking about the privilege of black men. There's 99 sections or 96 sections here. Okay, so and this is it's segmented into different areas. So I've already covered beauty, and now I'm in pop culture. And so once I'm done with pop culture, I can go back to kind of skim beauty. I did link everything in the about section and in this chat as well. So the next point that he makes here is I can wear a shirt that others are not commonly referred to as a wife beater and never have the language challenge. Wow. And you guys know I am so big on the things that you actually say out of your mouth and how they go out to actually manifest things within, our lives. I never even thought about that before seeing it right here. Wow. Yeah, like the what is it? White tea is yeah, a wife beater. That's insane. Um, I don't know if that's like an older word. I've heard it before, but I feel like I heard it when I was really young. I don't know if people still call it that. Hopefully not. But I have heard that before. Many of my favorite movies include images of strength that do not include members of the opposite sex and often are based on violence. So, what do you think about that? The next one here is many of my favorite genres of films, such as martial arts, are based on violence. I don't know if that's really a privilege over like women. I think maybe he was just making a statement there. I have the privilege of popularizing or consuming the idea of a thug, which is based on the violence and victimization of others with virtually no opposition from other men. That's true. That's true. At least from my opinion. Hello, Jashar. Welcome. Nice to see you. We're going through this checklist. Um, and thanks, DOD, for saying hello to everybody. So yeah, I mean, there's so many instances of privilege here. So for black men that are like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. You have a lot of privileges just by being a man. Um, so I'm gonna go back up to beauty just because I do want to highlight that. And as I said, the this part I will probably just have for members. I'll just do a members only just because I feel like that could go in deep. But these are the ones that I related to very closely. I have the ability to define Black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. In comparison, Black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin tone, hair, or body size. Do you in the chat agree with that? Because I do. Trying to make it a little bit bigger here so you can see. But I do. I definitely do. The next one here was I do not have to worry about the daily hassles of having my hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way Black women do. Now, I wouldn't call it a standard of beauty, but I did call out earlier that in the workplace, and I gave the example of the lawyer that recently had received kudos as a Black man who kept his dreadlocks, and he was still joined. Um, I think a company as a lawyer for them, and he kept his dreadlocks, which is not something that's normal. But outside of those instances, like I wouldn't really call that trying to live up to a standard of beauty. However, that is one style that for Black men they have to kind of be challenged by, as well as having too much hair. They have to kind of keep it groomed. But to the extent of Black women, I would see I would see for some reason YouTube hid your comment, DOD. But I'm gonna read it in a second. Um, and I just brought it up. So, but yeah, for Black women, to this point, I have the ability to define Black women's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, and body size. So yes, when you're thinking about hair, there is a standard that Black women are held to, and it's European standards. Because when I can go online and see Black men saying someone's hair is nappy and they need to do this, and she too dark, and this and that, and that's a European standard of beauty. So I think that's why your comment was flagged because you were cursing and in all caps, no doubt. So DOD is saying Black women are the most what? DOD, I think you need to say that comment again. I don't know what you're saying. Black women are the most. Are you saying Black women are the most people? Woman, I don't know. Say that comment again. I'm not quite sure what your statement is. So I'll move on here. But yes, I do agree with that. The standard, because I don't see black women going to most black men saying, "Hey, you're too dark. You need to put a perm in your hair. Um, you need to you need to get a flat iron and straighten it. I don't like dreadlocks on men." Like, do you hear these statements from black women telling black men this? You're too this. Your body isn't right. You're just blank. It's too big, too small, too this. You don't. And the privilege, I think that's a really important one, because this man is saying you have privileges when you look at two genders, men and women. Clearly, men have a privilege over women throughout the world. There are places where women still, I just learned, gosh, a country in the Middle East where these women are taking a stand because they want to ride bikes. I'm just like, oh my gosh, they still can't. It's 2021 and women in the world still can't even ride bikes in peace. Just like, gosh, privilege, male privilege, right? So you have that. Then we get to racial. So obviously, we have privileges based on race, right? And yes, some people will disagree, but I think we can see that in this country. So, Um, so yeah, that is privilege that this black man, this PhD called out. So when you think about us being called out within our own community, and then you look at us going outside of our community, we're kind of ostracized either way for our hair, skin tone, body, something. It's not, you can't necessarily go into your own community, maybe your circle of people, but broadly in the community. Because if that was the case, when you go on social media, you post something on YouTube or you do whatever within the broader community, broader space, or on the media, what was the, it was a gymnast that was called out for her hair. I think it was Gabby. Oh, I can't remember her name. Gabby something. She was called out. People were talking about her hair. It's like, are you kidding me? But again, that European standard and that privilege, that actually black men have. I'm sure there were black women calling her out as well, because we have been conditioned. But yes, that is a privilege that you get to look at black women and say, "Oh, you don't, your hair isn't straight," and this and that. We've seen too many instances of it. Like the fact that I can rattle off a couple just in an instant, and I'm not even someone that's super heavy in culture and celeb gossip and news and all of that is pretty sad. Um, was this written by? I actually don't know his preferences, just like I don't know the preferences of the men on the thumbnail. So I don't really venture into people's preferences romantically or otherwise. But if you would like to look him up, I will share the details in the chat. His name is Jewel Woods, and here's his link right there. You can look him up. Hello, Ben. Welcome in. DOD is saying simply, Black women are the most beautiful woman on the planet. I think that's wonderful that you're making that statement. But when you look at Black media, even Black owned media, I have to admit, I don't 100% think that all Black people have the same thinking as you, DOD. Titan sounds like that's interesting, that because he's calling men out. This is what happens, it seems, when black men calls black men out. It's so interesting. I'm like, you can't call black men out for anything without being called some type of name. It's interesting. Not that there's anything wrong with being, of the LGBTQ community or otherwise, but I think it's interesting that that was a statement that was made just simply because this man is making a checklist saying that, hey, black men, you have privilege. Just as if just as white men have privilege for being men. I really think that's interesting. Gabby Douglas, One Titans. Thank you. I was trying to think of that girl's name. I could picture her face and everything, but I was like, oh, what is that girl's name? Thank you so much. But it was only black women calling her out. Hmm. Show me some information on that because I highly doubt it. I'm not super big in the pop culture, but I've seen enough comments from black men calling people out for hair and and skin tone and everything else. So I don't know. I can't take your word for that one. I would have to literally see the comments. Now, I could believe there were black women calling her out because yes, the community as a whole holds black women to a very weird standard where they're looking for black women to be European, like a Meghan Markle. And it's like she's not a black woman. Like if you just looked at her walking down the street, you wouldn't say, "Yeah, that's a black woman" automatically. That's my thought process. Visually, no. We're not giving people DNA tests as we interact with people. So I don't know. It's a weird, kind of weird. That's how we get the Rachel Dolezals of the world, where it's this white woman who was parading around as if she was black. All she had to do was put a little kink in her hair, just do a little southern twang, and get a little tan, and fake it until she made it into the black community. So it's interesting. I think we have to be careful with that. Ben says politics is a good example. If you're black and a Democrat, they say you've been tricked like the rest of the community. But if you're black Republican, they just call you an Uncle Tom. That's very true. You for black people, it's very interesting. You cannot. It's like you cannot break the mold. I don't. It's this mentality. And my question is, whenever I'm talking politics, I don't like politics, but it's like look, just think about it. What has this group done for you? Neither party is good. You need to just make your own decision based on what your needs are. Don't just follow the crowd every single time just because the Democrats are saying this group is this. Well, what are you guys? Neither one of you are helping us. So why do you get my vote? Because I don't think my ancestors fought for the right to vote just to not really have the right to vote. We're just following the mold, voting the same way just because we're black. I think that's I might have to cover that in another video, but I think that's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous, and I think that is a that in itself is not a freedom mentality. One Titan says we call out weave, not natural hair. Okay, I want to see some proof. If you can find a link with showing the comments or even the Instagram, I don't know where it was posted. If you can show me that, I will believe you. Otherwise, I'm gonna follow what this man's saying in general. But that could be if that's an example of when they were all not saying anything. Great. I just find it hard to believe. So I'm gonna move on here though. As we covered pop culture, I'm gonna cover attitudes and ideology. I don't think I really read into this part before, so let's see what Dr. What is his name? Dr. Woods has to say. And I did think this man was a woman. I automatically thought he was a woman just because of the name Jewel. And then Zero in my last life, he actually called me out. He was like, "Oh, it's a man." I was like, "Oh, well, let me look this guy up." Okay, so attitudes and ideology. I have the privilege to define Black women as having an attitude without referencing the range of attitudes that Black women have. I think that's kind of weird. I feel like that whole stereotype of Black women having attitudes, again, I go back to the earlier point that was made about the stereotype. So earlier on, we talked about the fact that comedy, he made the point about pop culture. I come from a tradition of humor that is based largely on insulting and disrespecting women, especially mothers. And I brought up that example of Mike Epps, which is, I never really was into Mike Epps. I didn't think he was extremely funny. But Paris Milan had just put out a video about him, and she kept playing these different snippets of him calling out his one of his child's mothers and calling her James Brown and saying all these kind of rude things to her. And I was like, oh, and he was just trying to be funny. Other people were laughing with him, and it was just this normal thing, just disrespecting women. Now, I think that on YouTube, you will find a lot of back and forth, women making fun of black men making fun of black women. So that's a different space. But when you think about just comedy in the black spaces, yes, to the next point, I have the privilege of not having black women dress up and play funny characters, often overweight, that are supposed to look like me for the entire nation to laugh. I totally resonate with that. I 100% resonate with that. And I've said many times, they wish men would just stop doing it. Now, I've seen, Mrs. Doubtfire, but I don't think a lot of comedy has been dressing up as big women in general. But the comedians that really thrived, like Tyler Perry, Martin Lawrence, yeah, they got on their fat suit and they were the black woman stereotype. So yes. And I'm like, I don't know. Do you have to do that to make it big? I don't get it. Why do you have to put on a dress in general? Is my question. Why is that even a thing? But I don't know. Maybe it goes back to Shakespeare time where men were acting as women. Anyway, moving on here. Let me take a quick pause. I looked him up. Jewel was is I no wonder he's rights for he's what? He are you trying to say right? As in dub is that just a typo? No wonder he writes for a magazine called Miss Magazine. I never called out black women about weave, but I prefer natural hair. Sisters and Titan, you are right. Regardless, he is a man and he's calling out other black men. So if whatever his preference is, he has the hoo-has to call out other black men. I think that's important. So I do agree a little bit about the attitude thing. So the next one he points out, and then I'm going to kind of close things out here. I don't want to be on here too long. I'm going to lay down soon. I have the privilege of defining black women's attitudes without defining my attitudes as a black man. Oh my gosh, we can't even go into that. Um, I can believe that the success of the black family is dependent on returning men to their historical place within the family rather than in promoting policies that strengthen black women's independence or that provide social benefits to black children. Hmm. I have the privilege of believing that a woman cannot raise a son to be a man. You know what? This is another point I don't really agree with. Um, I don't really know if that's a privilege. I think that it is tough for a woman to raise a boy to be a man. I think that's why we have a lot of issues in our community right now. Is that there are a lot of boys that are now men, and whether it was a woman raising them or a man raising them, I just question how they were raised because um, when you hear some of the comments that certain men are making, or certain, especially younger guys, are making, and the expectations they have, the mentality is just different. Like when I think about when I hear my dad and my uncles and things that they say and the conversation they have and the responsibilities that they feel that they have, some of these men just don't have it. They don't have it. It's just not there. I don't know what happened, but maybe a part of it is just the amount of women that had to be in a position where they were raising a boy to be a man because the man was not in the home. Because these women, the man leaves and who's there taking care of the kid? Now, sometimes, You have a few instances where a woman leaves the situation, but it's not as likely. I have the privilege of believing that a woman must submit to her man. Is that a privilege? Because there are a lot of conversations on YouTube where men are saying women need to submit, and also women need to be, bringing home the bacon and doing X, Y, and Z and otherwise. And it's just like, okay, well, the women's having the kid and submitting and doing all this stuff, but what's the man doing? So I think that's an interesting conversation. But yeah, is that a privilege? Privilege of believing that a woman must submit to her man. I have the privilege of believing that before slavery, gender relationships. Here we go. It's Friday night. So people are doing crazy things in the street. Gender relationships between black men and women were perfect. Oh no, we're gonna talk about that in another video. Oh my goodness. Um, oh my goodness. I can only imagine. Okay, I have the privilege of believing that feminism is anti-black. Gosh, that's one for you, God. I have the privilege of believing that the failure of the black family is due to black matriarchy. I have the privilege of believing that household responsibilities are women's roles. I agree with that. I agree with that. I would say, yeah, I because I would say that women might have a privilege here with men sticking to a more traditional role, but most men are not saying like, "Hey, woman, stay home." Like most men are like, "Hey, I need help with these bills. Get to work and have these kids and do this and do that and do X, Y, and Z." That's why I've said a couple of times on the channel I don't really see the benefit so much for marriage because I'm not dying to have kids or anything. So I'm like outside of, you know, building that, I'm just like I just don't see quite what the big thing is. Now you can build legacy, you can build, wealth through a marriage, yes, but there's also a reason a lot of people are getting divorced. So I just can't with that one. Okay, the next one. I have privilege of believing. Oh wait, I have the privilege of believing that Black women are different sexual. Gosh, is this really true? I have the privilege of believing that Black women are different sexually than other women and judging them negatively based on this belief. What? I'm not a man, so I have no idea. I have no idea what that. I need people to tell me. Let me look at the chat. Let's pause there because I do think men in general. I feel like men in general think that. His preference is to keep black men and black women at each other's throats. It could be an agenda to do that. I don't disagree with you, God, because every time I come onto these YouTube streets, it's like, what is going on? I'm going to be talking about that in a future video. What I want to get to a discussion and understand where is all of this back and forth kind of. It almost feels like hatred coming from because every time I every time I visit, like, okay, let me just dip my toe in here and see what they're talking about. It gets real. It's like, oh, the people really think like this, and I, to some extent, yes, people are bolder on social media with their comments and things and what you might say, but still be respectful. Like just because you have a difference of an opinion, and I have a difference of an opinion, and you guys know on this channel, I even if I 100% do not agree with what you're saying, I don't want to block you because one, unless you're just saying something rude and just, like harassing people. Um, I want you to have free speech. I want to hear a perspective that's different than mine. And I want to be respectful about it. It's getting crazy. So DOD, there could be an agenda. Hey, Miss Full Roller. Uh-oh. I want to hear what you think about all of this. Women will submit to a man naturally as long as he's about his business. I agree with that, in most cases, but I think there are some women, um, where that doesn't actually happen, like and I'm thinking about a family member in particular, they're in an interracial relationship, and, mm, it seems like yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a good balance of that whole naturally submitting to the man part, but meh, that's me looking in from the outside. But yeah, I think most women that want to play that role and be more traditional, they will DOD as long as the man is also playing his role. But to my point earlier, I think I don't know, there's some kind of disconnect. I would say just men in general. I would say too, I won't say it's just black men, but specifically, obviously since I'm in the black community, definitely some weird conversations with black men too of like they don't want to step up to that role. And I do think it's a generational thing too. I think that's a part of it as well. And then of course, if you're not making the right amount of money, then you're probably not going to have that role in some context. Um, but there's a lot of facets that go into that. You have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right base. So Miss Ruler says, I'm going to say this one thing about that. If you are upset at women regarding raising sons, then also get on the men for not staying around to raise their offspring. It takes two to make the child. Yes, it takes two to tango. Exactly. And one girl I follow on YouTube, she provides a lot of financial content. And she put up this post where she's saying, the baby mama couldn't be that crazy if you left the kids with her. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's interesting, Miss Full Roller. And therefore it takes two to raise them. It is the woman's and man's responsibility, not the siblings, aunties, grandmothers, etc. If men do not want to raise children, don't bring them here. Exactly. Exactly. That's just it. So with sports, I'm not really a sports person, so I'm gonna skip on that. um, but Miss Roller, now that you're here, this was the part that I really honed in on. Beauty. I have the ability to define a black woman's beauty by European standards in terms of skin tone, hair, body size. In comparison, black women rarely define me by European standards of beauty in terms of skin tone, hair, or body size. That was the biggest one that I 100% related to easily throughout this whole checklist because you see it all over the place. Black owned publications, movies. I mean, you just see it. It's like now we're slowly seeing more darker tone women and people with different features and hair textures, but it's been years where this is just natural and we still have like sometimes you go on TikTok and stuff, girls talking about the black boys and talking about their hair and their skin and their this and that and they don't look like essentially they don't look like a white person, which they wouldn't look like a white person because they're not white. Just like a black man wouldn't look like a white man. It would be like me dating a black guy and saying, my preference, I really don't normally date black guys, or saying I really don't date dark guys. I normally like Hispanics, they're tan. Or, I don't really like your dreadlocks. I normally like, guys with smoother hair because I can run my hands through their hair. Like it would be like saying black women saying those type of comments to men on the regular. But it doesn't happen. Black women generally don't say that. So instead we have men saying you need to flat iron your hair. Only talk to girls that are mixed. I like yellow bones. This is why Danny Lay was able to put out a song, which she did get backlash for because it was also pretty trashy. But she got backlash for about yellow bone is what he wants. Well, how would you even be empowered to make that kind of song, even with it being so badly made, without having a community that's like, "Oh, yeah, yellow bone is better. Yellow skin is better." Like, it's just a lot. It's a lot. Um, and then I don't have to worry about the daily hassle of having my hair conforming to any standard image of beauty the way Black women do. I really yeah, I totally understood those. Again, you guys know sports, look, I'm not really big into sports. We can go through those if you guys want. We have a few minutes here, but I think what the ones I'm going to hone in on last are the ones at the end, and then I'll probably do a members only kind of dive through with some of this. So, ooh, this is interesting. I don't know. I guess I'll do the uh, diaspora global. Wow. I have the privilege of being a part of a gender where the mutilation and disfiguration or disfigurement of a girl's is used to deny her mhm, and protect her virginity from males. We know that happens. That's privilege. Black boys in Africa are not running around afraid that someone's going to mutilate them, right? It's only the girls. So here we have in our diaspora, because there are some people that say, like, oh, well, black men in Africa are different. Again, I'm bringing it to with this discussion the privilege, the privileges that are based on gender, privileges based on race. So while black men may not have the privilege based on their race, they definitely have privileges based on their gender because you can't have one without the other. You can't say men have privileges over women generally, and black men not have privileges over women, specifically black women. So looking within the group, you're going to see it the same way in every group that the men have these privileges. Okay. Wow. It goes deep. This section goes deep. I might have to. Oh, I may have to. This one's interesting, actually. I'm going to skip a couple of these and say this. By the time I enter college and even through college, I have the privilege of not having to worry whether I will be able to marry a black woman. So I'm guessing this person is saying the opposite for the black women. And, yeah, well, for one, there's more women in colleges. There's definitely more black women than black men in colleges. Part of that's probably because um, already men attended lower rates than women, and then for black men too, I feel like more of them may look at other jobs too that where you don't need a degree compared to women, like blue collar jobs. Women aren't typically going for blue collar jobs as well. So there's a lot of different reasons for that. Um, that's interesting. In college, black male professors will be. I'm going to look at the comments here. In college, black male professors will be involved in interracial marriages at much higher rates than members of the opposite sex will be. I don't know if that's really a privilege because I think that black men and black women have the same opportunity. And I would say black women probably even more than black men to date and marry interracially. But most black women, the preference for them, well, at least I would say probably definitely older than me for sure. Definitely privileged, or not really privileged, but preference towards black men in comparison, which is probably why black women aren't going, "Ooh, your hair is like afro textured. I really want, I wish you would just cut it off, or I wish I could run my hands through your hair like I could with Carlos." I'm making it up. I have not dated someone named Carlos, but that would be how it's called. Like But women will hear those things from men, oddly enough. Okay, let me get to these comments, and I'm probably gonna wrap it up soon so I can lay down. Miss Perla said, "Yes, exactly. Black men are the drivers of black women's appearance. Exactly, and a lot of now black women are conditioned to have this look. Luckily, there have been some movements where, natural hair movement where we've been embracing more and more, but yeah, still held at that European standard. Um, most black women's appearance. Let me clarify. I'm too old to. Thank you, Miss Roller, for clarifying. No, I have dread. Yeah, we've seen Miss Full Roller. She has natural hair. Her hair is more natural than mine because she doesn't even put heat to it. If a man you're with asked you to stop wearing dreads, would you? What? Okay, so DOD is asking some questions of Miss Full Roller. Hey, Natural, you came back in. We're pretty much probably about to close out the conversation here. Um, Miss Fuller says no, no, no. H just Oh, I see you did that because YouTube didn't catch your comment, Miss Roller. Oh, that's funny. Um, that is too funny. That's my point, Sarah. I don't really get your point, DOD. How's that a point? You asked one woman if a black man asked her to change her appearance. Notably, if I can also include this, a woman that is seasoned, well into her years, where she's probably like a man can't tell me anything because I've been around many women that are much older than me, and they've said, like, look, try me. They're not putting up with it. They're not putting up with it. If there's even a slight, you're out. We're done. So you asked one woman that opinion. So here's the thing. Show me where men are not saying and holding women to a European standard. Who are men dating? What are men saying online? What are men saying that they want women to look like? What are black media brands? What are black artists? Who are they showing in their videos as the love interest? Not as the dance girls, because really, who cares about that? But as their love interest. Who do they look like? What do they look like? Right? What are they saying in casting calls? Have you ever seen a casting call say black men only mixed race? However, I can note examples where you have seen casting calls where they're saying no dark skins, only mixed race, light skin. Do they say the same for men? Are black women saying, look, I can literally say I've never gone on a date with a black man and said, I usually don't talk to dark skinned guys, but I've heard that myself personally. If you want a personal example, personally. And it's not just about the hair, it's about the skin tone, it's about the body shape, whole spectrum. So I don't know. I'm trying to understand that point. DOD said, "Oh, Miss Forrell says, please explain." I know we're on the same wavelength thing because I'm like, where's the point? Where is the point? Okay, so DOD is saying he said black men drive black women's appearance. Yes, in a general sense. So in the society, right? Not one man going to one woman. That's one example. That's like me saying, "Oh, so white people aren't racist because look, or white people don't drive what's happening in the workplace because guess what? Actually, this guy, this black man, he owns this one company and I work there. White people don't make up any policies in the general workplace. No, because my experience, I work for this black guy. He owns this place. It should be easy for black people to get jobs. They shouldn't feel any way in the workplace. No, I feel fine. No, no. Just I don't know. I don't fully get it. Miss Full Roller may get it, but I'm not. I'm not getting that. I just see one example of a woman saying, "Nope, you're not changing my appearance." He's not driving your appearance. I asked the one woman that made the statement, and she contradicted herself. But how does she contradict herself, Dod? And I also clarified later. Most. LOL. I hit the enter too fast. My Okay. Thank you, Miss Forwell. Exactly. DOD, you missed my comment where I clarified my statement. Yeah, like it's a generality. Like, yes, we could call out different examples. Like we could say, well, black men are not colorists. Black people are not colorists. Because I made a video where I said, look, black men are colorists. I think black women are colorists. I think all people are. Um, and I have different reasons for that. But I could make an example of, maybe a guy dated me and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you have the most beautiful skin tone in the world." And that would be an example of, "Oh, well, people aren't really colorist. He likes dark skin. He could still be colorist. Who knows?" I don't know. So anyway, the conversation really just wanted to highlight this checklist. Now, I actually wanted to get into the part of, is it a myth? So I am going to share this for a second in case anyone is interested. Let me just take that away for a second. Because there was another thing that had came up that I want to dig more into. Let me pull it up here before I jump off. And it is challenging the myth because I try to come with both sides here. So this is challenging the myth of black male privilege. So their asterisk says the concept of black male privilege has become popular in black gender discourse, often used by black feminists as a conceptual tool. The theory accuses black males of enjoying so called privileges in society over black women and girls. I really don't think it's a myth, but I think the extent of this checklist that Mr. Jewell has, um, I think some of it I wouldn't so much call privilege, but I would highlight as something that's an issue in the culture. But yes, he did bring up a lot of good points. Okay, so he says this essay assumes that privilege, if genuine, should be detectable by material standards and thus be empirically measurable. It is argued that research can not only detect whether or not privilege exists, but assess the extent to which it provides its benefactors with power, opportunities, and resources. Hence, white men and women's privilege is measurable in a variety of socioeconomic contexts. To access the materiality of claims regarding black male privilege, this essay tests the theory by focusing on several general areas: leadership, domestic violence, um, leading causes of death, income, and employment. So they were asking the question if black male privilege exists or not. And this can be downloaded for $15. I will provide the link if someone really wants to go in debt and take a look. That is the article. um, but thank you for being here with me. Thanks for having the discussion with me. Are there any last thoughts before I hop off? Was there anything surprising about the checklist that came out to you? Of course, I didn't go through every single point because this man, he has a long list here. I mean, ooh, it's a long list. That's all I have to say. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to call out real quick. Hmm. Oh my gosh, he did talk about the church and religious traditions, which you've been following me for a while or watching me for a while. You know how I feel about the church. I will be doing a video soon as a follow up about the conversation I had a while back on the black church and how I don't think they are helpful to the black community whatsoever. But they're saying in the black church, the majority of pastoral leadership is male. In the black church tradition, most of the theology has a male point of view. For example, most will assume that the man is the head of the household. Now, this I would say I can't, even though, I talk about the black church, I would say that's just the religion in general. It's very male centered as everything is. So, overall theme of this from my perspective is that, look, Black men do not know what it's like to be a woman, just like white men do not know what it's like to be a woman. There's privilege for all groups of men. And so I think that we need to have more men recognize that and recognize the privilege they do have, because no, Black men are not 100% just down and out. There's nothing they can't do. The man is always this and that. I've literally heard these statements from Black men. The man just won't let me. No, you have privilege as a Black man, but how do you use that privilege for good? So, and how do you use that privilege to help your counterpart, Black women? All right. So, because really with a lot of these statements, you can literally use a lot of this crossover and just put white men in there, because, you know, men do have a lot of privilege in general. And so we bring it to the Black community. All right. Let me look at some last comments here before I let you guys go. My last words are I love. I love Black women and Black women only. Thank you, DOD. Light brown or dark, I love you all. Well, thank you, DOD. And with that, I think I'm gonna close out. Miss Ruler says, "Aw." I'm gonna close it out. Hopefully, you thought this was a I don't know, well-rounded discussion. I try to be very balanced in what I say. I try to be pretty respectful to people. I know there's a lot of creators right now that are, saying distasteful things. Women, men, all the like. They're all just, you can get a laugh from some of it, but it's a little scary to think about just some of the comments that are going around and some of the commentary that's going around. But in the end, hopefully, we will learn to get along with each other. We will understand each other more by having more open minded discussions with each other. And with that, I am going to let you all go. And tomorrow I will be talking about, I think I'm talking about money topics tomorrow. So if you want to join that, stay tuned, and I'll have some other videos coming soon as well. So good night, stay safe, and I will see you all next time. Bye.